here to define what a leader is and what role they play. Using real-world examples, this presentation debunks many myths about leadership and gives insight into different types of leaders and the power they possess. By creating an environment of trust, cooperation, and teamwork, leaders can foster productivity and distribute responsibility among their members. We will discuss how to do so through completion of important tasks and how to successfully and ethically accomplish team goals. Leaders must have a strong understanding of their group members to foster efficient communication and facilitate success by functioning as the completing piece of their group. Our goal is to present a firm understanding of leadership, who leaders are, and how they function to inspire others to emerge or be appointed in the future. What makes a leader? Some would say they give orders and tell people what to do. But there is much more to it than that. So let's try to define leaders and the art of leadership. What are their sources of power and influence? Is there a difference in leadership style? And is one method greater than another? Well, these are all great questions that deserve an answer. So let's get started by taking a look at actual leaders in the world today. By their example, we can see what good leaders do. We will also take a look at what we expect from leaders and try to make sense out of it all. A common myth we hear is that leaders have inherent unique traits that they all share. But the truth is that followers have many of these same traits as well. We see icons like Steve Jobs and believe he just naturally knew how to make Apple a success. Looking at his life, however, you discover that early in his career he wasn't able to lead the company, encountered resistance to his ideas, and was in fact pushed out for a time. He learned from his mistakes though, figured out how to lead better, came back to turn the company around. He evolved over time and as a result became more effective. Looking at leadership, we realize that there really isn't a single definition, trait, or ideal style. Steve Jobs was very good at ordering people to do things, but not so great at fostering relationships. His method worked at Apple, but would not go far if he was leading a charitable organization, clinic, or child care center. Now, there are a few concepts that do help us define certain leaders and leadership qualities. The first is known as the functional concept, and the idea is that within a group, tasks and people-related functions are needed. So the leader has to analyze and determine the best people to fit these needs. Another term called the contingency concept promotes the idea that a leader can and should change their approach based on a given situation. And this can vary from delegating, participating, selling, or telling. Distributed leadership, in a sense, combines the ideas behind contingency and functional concepts, where group members are all designated leaders in some form or another, and together they help to move things forward. Sharing leadership in the distributed manner is an ideal model that many would say is the best approach. It encourages individuals to take ownership of tasks and benefits the entire group because everyone feels invested. A look at leadership requires an examination of sources of power and influence. How did Nelson Mandela, for instance, become the leader of his nation? Well, referent power was a factor. What does that term mean? Well, it refers to admiration and respect, where members of a group follow a leader because they aspire to be like that person or copy their behavior. Mandela had this respect and went on to become the leader of South Africa after being imprisoned for 27 years. Now, in addition to this, there are other areas of influence and power to look at. For example, legitimate power, where a leader is elected or appointed. Mandela did not have legitimate power in his early life as he struggled to end apartheid in his country. But of course, he eventually did go on to have legitimate power. Reward or punishment is also a source of power because either has the ability to change the attitudes or behaviors of others. However, it doesn't always change beliefs. Looking at Mandela's life again, he was punished severely, but despite this, he held on to his beliefs. There are other sources of power and influence as well. Here are some common leadership styles we can examine in the real world. Going back in history, we recognize Napoleon was an autocratic, transformational, and charismatic leader. He took part in a revolution and ultimately became Emperor of France. Loved by his nation, he used these powers to build an empire. Good leaders establish goals, drive overall direction. Continually, they monitor tasks and progress. They help to promote member talents and encourage them to assume leadership roles. It could easily be argued that Napoleon was a good leader. He galvanized a country and drove his mass of followers to a position of dominance across most of the European landscape. However, he was also responsible for war and death. So, in the end, he and his followers actually suffered from self-inflicted elements of groupthink, where there is an overestimation of power and morality, a closed-mindedness, a pressure to conform. His people followed him because of his strength, vision, and leadership style. But history shows a good leader doesn't necessarily mean good end results. Our expectation of good leaders include many factors. We expect administrative duties to be handled, meetings organized, with follow-ups and records taken. We look to the leader to drive the discussion, to stimulate creative thinking, and to encourage us along the way. The best leaders understand these expectations and work to fulfill that role. Our goal was to present an understanding of leadership, who leaders are and how they can act as a conduit for inspiration and change. They have the ability to transform lives, and often do.